My girlfriend said, "If you focused on me like you focus on work, I'd stay." I said, "Then go." She smirked like I'd fold. By midnight her boxes were by the door, by morning her sister was calling me Heartless, and 2 weeks later security escorted her out of my office lobby. Original post: I'm Evan, 33, and I live in Denver. I work in logistics for a regional medical supply company. Not glamorous, but it pays well, it's stable, and when hospitals need something moved fast, people suddenly remember my job matters. Last year I made about $86,000, plus a bonus that mostly disappeared into my condo payment, my truck, and whatever random emergency adulthood throws at you. My girlfriend was Kelsey, 29. We'd been together a little over 2 years and she'd been living in my condo for 9 months. She worked in social media for a boutique fitness chain, very online, very polished, very good at turning a normal moment into a performance if she thought it would get her attention. That's important, because with Kelsey, attention was never just attention. It was proof that I cared, proof that I prioritized her, proof that she came first every second of every day, and if she didn't feel centered enough, she'd say I was checked out or cold or her favorite word lately, too focused. Apparently having a full-time job, a mortgage, and adult responsibilities meant I was emotionally unavailable. For months, everything became a test. If I answered a work call during dinner, I was choosing spreadsheets over her. If I said I couldn't do a last-minute day trip because I had an early meeting Monday, I was putting my career above the relationship. If I got quiet because I was tired, she'd ask who had my attention instead of asking whether I was okay. I kept trying to explain the same simple thing. Work was not my mistress. Work paid for the condo she lived in. Work paid the electric bill, the groceries, the HOA fee, the internet, the car insurance I had stupidly added her to 6 months earlier, and half the small "can you just cover this" expenses that somehow always became my problem. But Kelsey didn't care about that part. She cared about feeling like the center of gravity. The night it ended, we were at a tapas place downtown on a Friday. I had planned it because she'd been complaining that I was distracted lately and said we never had real date nights anymore. So I booked the reservation. Nice place. Good table. I even left my laptop at home on purpose. Dinner was mostly fine until my phone buzzed. I ignored it the first time. Then it buzzed again. Then our warehouse supervisor called. Now, if you work normal office hours, a Friday night call might feel optional. In my job, a Friday night call can mean a Monday morning disaster. One mistransfer, one wrong pallet, one shipment sitting in the wrong state. Suddenly, an entire chain of people is mad before breakfast. I glanced at Kelsey and said, "I'm sorry, I need 2 minutes." She set her fork down like I'd insulted her family. I stepped outside, handled the issue in 3 minutes, texted one driver and came back in. She was already done. She barely spoke through dessert. Then in the parking garage, she folded her arms and hit me with the rehearsed version. "You know what your problem is," I said, "probably several things. Which one are we doing tonight?" She didn't smile. She said, "If you focused on me like you focus on work, I'd stay." Just like that, calm, cold, like she was delivering a line she'd been saving. I looked at her for a second because I genuinely thought I might have misheard her. "Stay," I said. She shrugged. "You heard me," I said. "Are you threatening to leave because I took one call?" She rolled her eyes. "It's not about one call, Evan. It's about priorities. I'm tired of begging for your attention." That part was especially wild because nobody who knew Kelsey would ever accuse her of begging quietly for anything. I asked, "So what exactly are you saying?" And then she said it again, slower this time, like I was supposed to be frightened by the possibility of losing her. "If you focused on me like you focus on work, I'd stay." That was the moment everything went still for me. No anger, no panic, no urge to argue, just clarity. I said, "Then go." Her face changed immediately, not hurt, not heartbreak, surprise, real surprise, because she thought she was starting a negotiation. She thought I'd apologize, promise more attention, maybe plan a weekend away, maybe spend money, maybe scramble. She thought she'd thrown a dramatic line into the air and I'd rush to catch it before it landed. Instead, I opened my truck door. She laughed once, short and sharp. "You're being ridiculous," I said. "No, I'm done doing relationship performance reviews in parking garages." She stepped closer. "So that's it, you're just giving up," I said. "No, you offered leaving as leverage. I'm accepting it as a decision." Then I got in my truck and left her standing there. She texted before I hit the freeway, seriously. Then another. "Are you really driving away right now? Then you better not make this bigger than it is." I didn't answer. When I got home, I took 30 seconds in the kitchen and just stood there. Condo was quiet, dishwasher humming, hallway light on. Her giant straw tote by the entry bench, her sneakers kicked under the bar stool, normal little evidence of a person who assumes she still belongs where she is. Then I grabbed boxes from the storage closet. I didn't throw anything. I didn't trash anything. I packed carefully. Clothes into wardrobe boxes, shoes in shopping bags, makeup in plastic bins. Skin care stuff from the bathroom lined up in a laundry basket, her ring light, her yoga mat, her blender, her 2 framed prints that looked like quotes from a breakup podcast. The throw pillows she insisted made the couch look warmer. The little acrylic organizer from the bathroom sink. The plant she bought and forgot to water, which I had been keeping alive out of habit. By 11:15, I had 7 boxes, 3 tote bags, 2 hanging garment bags, and 1 suitcase lined up by the front door. I left 1 note on top. "You said you'd stay if I focused on you like I focus on work. I'm choosing peace instead. Your things are packed. Text me tomorrow to arrange pickup." Evan at 11:42 she called. I let it ring, then she texted. "You are not seriously packing my stuff," I replied once. Yes, she called again immediately. I let that ring too. Then came the classic reversal. "I didn't mean it like that then. You know how I talk when I'm upset then." Opened the door. That last one told me she was already outside. I checked the camera app. She was in the hallway, arms folded, staring at her phone. I spoke through the door without opening it. "Your things are packed. Come back tomorrow between 10 and noon. She knocked once hard. "Stop being dramatic," I said. "No, I'm being clear." Then I muted my phone, turned off the hall light, and left her standing there. The next morning I had 19 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and texts from 2 people who were not me and not her, which is how you know trouble has recruited backup. One was her sister, Rowan. The other was her friend, Marissa. Both versions of the message were basically the same. "She's upset. You took this too far. Call her." I didn't call anybody. I took screenshots, saved everything to a folder. Then I loaded her boxes into my truck and rented a 5x10 climate-controlled storage unit 20 minutes away. $112 a month. I prepaid 2 months because experience has taught me that chaos does not get cheaper later. Then I texted Kelsey one line. "Your belongings are in storage. I'll send the access details after you confirm a pickup time." That's when the screaming voicemail came in. Not crying, screaming. "You don't get to throw me away because you're married to your job." That was when I knew I'd made the right decision. Because even then, she still thought the issue was my focus. Not her ultimatum, not her manipulation, not the fact that she used leaving like a coupon code she expected me to redeem, just my failure to beg. That weekend was the calmest weekend I'd had in months, and that alone should tell you everything. Update 1. 4 days later, the flying monkeys had fully formed. First, Rowan texted me from an unknown number because I'd blocked the first one. Her message said, "Kelsey is humiliated. She didn't think you'd actually do this." That sentence did not have the effect she thought it would. I replied, "She told me she'd stay if I focused on her like work." I said go. That's the story. No answer after that. Then Marissa tried. Softer angle. She wrote, "You know she has a big mouth when she's emotional. This didn't need to become a breakup." I didn't even respond. Because that was the entire problem. With Kelsey, everything was supposed to be dramatic right up until the moment consequences arrived. Then suddenly, nobody was supposed to take her seriously. On day 5, she showed up at the condo while I was at work. She still had the garage clicker I'd forgotten about. That was my mistake. The camera caught her coming in through the garage door, walking around like she still lived there, opening cabinets, checking the bedroom, then standing in the kitchen staring at the counters like she expected me to appear and apologize. She stayed for 11 minutes. Before leaving, she placed the framed photo from our first trip to Estes Park in the middle of the kitchen island. Not taking it, displaying it, like bait, like she wanted me to see it and call. I didn't call. I disabled the garage remote that afternoon and paid $165 to have the building system reprogrammed. Changed the smart lock codes too. Expensive annoyance, but cheaper than letting somebody treat access like emotion. That evening, she texted from Marissa's phone. "You changed the codes. Are you seriously locking me out?" I replied, "You no longer live here." Then I blocked that number too. Saturday was supposed to be her storage pickup. She brought Rowan and, surprisingly, her mother, Renee. That was a tactical choice. Kelsey thought Renee's presence would pressure me into acting reasonable, which in her mind meant guilty. We met in the storage office lobby, so everything had witnesses and cameras. I had the unit open before they arrived. Her boxes were stacked neatly, labeled, nothing broken, nothing missing that was actually hers. Kelsey walked in first, sunglasses on, attitude on full display. Rowan came behind her looking annoyed to be involved. Renee looked tired. Kelsey took one look at the unit and said, "Wow. You really committed to the bit." I said, "It's not a bit." She laughed. "You packed my life into a storage unit because I called you out." I said, "No, I packed your belongings because you said you'd leave." She rolled her eyes and turned to Renee. "See, this is what he does. Everything is literal with him. Everything is cold." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshot, and handed it to Renee. She read the line, then read it again. "If you focused on me like you focus on work, I'd stay." Renee looked up slowly. "Kelsey," she said, "you said this." Kelsey immediately switched tone. "Mom, you don't get the context." Renee said, "It sounds like an ultimatum." Kelsey snapped. "It was a conversation," I said, "in a parking garage after I took one work call." Rowan looked at Kelsey, then at me, then at the storage unit. You could see the math changing in real time. Renee handed me my phone back and said quietly, "I'm sorry." Not dramatic, not performative, just simple. Kelsey went red. "Are you kidding me?" she said. "You're taking his side." Renee said, "I'm taking the side where adults say what they mean." That was the most help anyone had given me in weeks. Kelsey spent the next 10 minutes complaining that I'd overreacted, embarrassed her, and made things ugly. Which was funny because she was standing in front of a perfectly organized storage unit full of her own things, all packed better than she ever packed for vacations. Before leaving, she stopped at the door and said, "You really chose work over me." I said, "No, I chose peace over management." She hated that. Later that night, Renee texted me privately. I didn't know she was still doing this. "I'm sorry for the trouble." I thanked her and left it there. For about 48 hours, things were quiet. Then Kelsey escalated. Update 2, the first sign was my office receptionist calling upstairs on a Wednesday morning. She said, "Hey, there's a woman down here asking for you, says it's personal." I asked for a description. She said, "Blonde, very dressed up, carrying a white gift bag, looks angry but polished." So, Kelsey. I said, "Please tell her I'm unavailable and she needs to leave." 2 minutes later, the receptionist called back. She says she just wants to drop off something important. I went downstairs because I didn't want this turning into a scene in front of my staff. Kelsey was standing in the lobby in heels like she was arriving for an audition. White gift bag in one hand. Expression tuned carefully between wounded and superior. She saw me and smiled like we were about to have a mature, cinematic reconciliation. "I just wanted 5 minutes," she said. I stayed 6 feet away. "You don't get 5 minutes." She held up the bag. "I brought your watch and the notebook you left in my car." I said, "You can leave them with reception." She lowered her voice. "Are you really going to act like I'm some random girl?" I said. "You're a former resident of my condo who won't stop contacting me." That landed harder than I expected. Her face tightened. "Wow." I said, "Leave the bag and go." Then she tried the crowd version. "You know what your problem is," she said, louder now. "You focus on tasks because people scare you." Reception heard that. 2 sales reps heard that. Security heard that. I said, please escort her out. Kelsey stared at me like she couldn't believe I'd used the real-world version of boundaries instead of the fantasy one where she gets a speech and a second chance. Security walked her outside. She didn't scream. She did worse. She cried in the lobby just long enough for strangers to notice. That same night, she sent me a Venmo request for $486 labeled shared groceries/utilities/emotional labor. I wish I were kidding. I declined it with one note. You lived in my condo rent-free for 9 months. We're settled. 5 minutes later, she made a vague post online about men who drain your youth and call you dramatic when you ask for reciprocity. A mutual acquaintance screenshotted it and sent it to me with, "Is this about you?" I replied, "Probably," then saved the screenshot. A few days after that, Brandon, one of her coworkers, messaged me on LinkedIn. His note said, "Hey man, I'm sure there are 2 sides, but Kelsey seems really hurt. Maybe closure would help." I sent him the same screenshot I had shown Renee. Nothing else. He replied once. Oh, that was enough. Then came the part that pushed it from annoying to disturbing. Friday night, 11:43 p.m., voicemail. I let it go to message because I no longer answered unknown numbers. When I played it back, it was Kelsey. Soft voice. Almost calm. She said, "I can see your kitchen lights on. You're really home doing spreadsheets instead of talking to me. That's actually kind of sad." I stood up so fast I knocked the remote off the couch. I checked the cameras. There she was, outside the building entrance in a hoodie, staring up at my floor. That was the first moment I stopped thinking of this as a messy breakup and started thinking of it as evidence. I called the non-emergency police line. An officer came, took the report, viewed the footage, and told me to save every message and every appearance. He said if she returned after being warned, I had grounds to push harder. The next morning, I called an attorney. Consult fee was $300, best $300 I'd spent since the breakup. She drafted a cease and desist letter for $425 and sent it Monday. Formal language, no personal emotion. Just stop contacting, stop appearing at residence, stop appearing at workplace, preserve all communication. Kelsey responded exactly the way unstable people always respond to being told to stop. She sped up. She left a handwritten note under my windshield wiper 3 days later. "When you're ready to focus on what matters, call me." I kept it. Then she showed up at my gym on a Sunday morning, supposedly by coincidence, wearing the exact green jacket from our first road trip. I turned around and left before even scanning in. That same week, I got promoted to regional operations lead on a new hospital account rollout. More responsibility. More money, more travel. Also, ironically, more proof that my job required actual focus. The difference was I no longer had anyone at home punishing me for being competent. Around then, I started seeing Elise, very casually at first. She worked for one of our vendor partners. Smart, steady, unimpressed by drama. The first time I told her I had to take a quick work call during coffee, she said, "Do it. I'll be here." I almost laughed. You don't realize how abnormal your old relationship was until somebody normal walks into frame. Kelsey found out about Elise through the usual grapevine and absolutely lost whatever remained of her composure. She sent one last email to my work account with the subject line, "Wow." That email, plus the prior police report, plus the lobby incident, plus the voicemail, plus the camera footage, was enough for my attorney to say the sentence I had hoped not to hear but fully expected. We should file. So we filed for a civil protection order. Final update: the hearing was 6 weeks later. Kelsey showed up dressed like she was going to church with a camera crew. Neutral blouse, soft makeup, hair simple. No giant expressions. Her entire body language said misunderstood woman seeking closure. My attorney showed up with a tabbed binder. Guess which one mattered more? Kelsey's attorney tried the soft approach first. Said his client had been emotional, that the breakup was abrupt, that she simply wanted a conversation and some acknowledgement after investing years in the relationship. My attorney handed over the screenshots, the office incident report, the Venmo request. The note on my windshield, the camera stills, the voicemail transcript. Then she played the audio. "I can see your kitchen lights on." The room changed after that. The judge asked Kelsey directly whether she had continued contacting me after being told not to. Kelsey tried to explain that she felt discarded, that I had chosen work over real intimacy, that she believed we just needed one honest conversation without my usual emotional distance. The judge looked down at the texts again and said, "You told him you would stay if he focused on you like he focuses on work. He told you to go. That may have been painful, but it was clear. Everything after that appears to be harassment." That was basically the whole case. The order was granted. 1 year, no contact, no showing up at my home, office, or gym. Stay 300 feet away. Not dramatic, not Lifetime movie stuff, just enough to make peace enforceable. After the hearing, Renee caught me outside the courtroom. She looked embarrassed to be there. She said, "I'm sorry it got this far." I said, "Me too." Then she said something that stuck with me. She always thought if she pushed hard enough, people would prove they loved her by staying. I said, "That only works until someone doesn't." She nodded once and left. That was the last time anyone from her side spoke to me directly. I heard later that Kelsey lost a project at work because she had used company time and company email during part of the mess. Not fired as far as I know, but not thriving either. I also heard she was still telling people I had emotionally abandoned her over one argument. That part didn't bother me anymore. People who need villains will build them out of whatever material they have. Meanwhile, my life got quieter. Better. Elise and I kept seeing each other. Slow, normal, adult. No testing. No scorekeeping. No demand that I prove affection by failing at my responsibilities. She actually liked that I was focused. She said it made me dependable. That sentence alone almost reset my nervous system. Work got better too. The promotion came with a $9,500 raise and a cleaner path upward. I took over the hospital rollout, did it well, and for the first time in a while I got to enjoy success without somebody framing it as betrayal. And the condo feels like mine again. No strategic silence. No dramatic sighs because I answered an email after dinner. No random fights because I didn't notice a new candle or comment fast enough on a filtered selfie. Just space, clean counters. My own routines, my own quiet. Here's the lesson. Focus is not the problem in a healthy relationship. Weaponized focus is. Kelsey didn't want balance. She wanted proof of power. She wanted to be able to interrupt my life, watch me drop everything, and call that love. She wanted my attention not as connection, but as tribute. And the second I refused to offer it on command, suddenly I was cold, distant, obsessed with work, emotionally unavailable. That's the trick people like that use. They turn your stability into a flaw because your stability is the one thing they can't control unless you let them. I was never choosing work over love. I was choosing responsibility over chaos. Then eventually I chose peace over performance. And once I did that, everything else got easier. If you've ever dealt with someone who treated attention like a loyalty test, let me know in the comments whether you faced something similar or what you think about how I handled it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe, like, and share.